Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday,
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Last election, we've had a very poor choice in 2019.
OK, Sir Keir Starmer answered some GB News viewers' questions. We'll have reaction from Sir Graham Brady as well. Plus...
Follow them down.
Yes!
Yes! There we go. Yes! They're young, they're full of enthusiasm, they're optimistic.
Has Nigel Farage caught the establishment sleeping? He is very, very popular with the Gen Zers, isn't he? And...
That's looking at driving licences, other access to finance, all sorts of other things.
Do you think it's right that Rishi Sunak should throw the book at teenagers who bunk off national service? Also...
could send a very symbolic gesture to millions of people by saying that she was going to stop using those jets.
Yeah, I reveal which global superstar has a Packham private jet plea in their inbox. He has mugged himself off big time there. I am going to bring you the very first of tomorrow's front pages as well. With my press bag, I've got former BBC chief political correspondent and ITV as well, John Sargent, former Apprentice star Joanna Jarju, and political commentator Alex Armstrong. Oh, and life's all about balance, isn't it? He got back on it today, that lad. You love to see it. Get ready, Britain, here we go. Can you trust a word that Sir Keir Starmer says? Next.
Good evening from the GB newsroom at 9:01. Your headlines. Opposition leaders are accusing the Tories of being corrupt after a string of people with links to the party are caught up in allegations of betting on the timing of the general election. 4 people are being investigated by the Gambling Commission, including Laura Saunders, the wife of the Tories' campaign director. Craig Williams, another Conservative candidate, has also admitted to an error of judgment after placing a bet on when the election would take place. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says any lawbreakers will be booted out of the party. But Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says it shows everything that is wrong with the Tory party.
I think he should come clean and say who knew. He should take immediate action against those that are being investigated, suspend his candidate. If they're my candidate, I'd have had them out the door without their feet touching the ground, and show some leadership on this. It's the first instinct of some of those Tories in relation to a general election is not what's good for the country, but how quickly can I get to the bookies and make myself some money. I mean, it tells you everything that's wrong with 14 years of chaos and decline.
Nigel Farage has suggested the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO. After missing out on last night's BBC Question Time Leader Special, the Reform leader has taken part in an interview with BBC's Nick Robinson.
We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what we've done as an excuse. I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And, of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary-General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansionism.
In other news, a 7-month-old baby girl who was mauled to death by a dog inside her family home in Coventry has been named. Ellie Doherty suffered serious head injuries after being bitten by the pet dog and died in hospital last Sunday. The dog, registered as a Belgianese Malinois, which is not considered a dangerous breed, was removed from the house and humanely destroyed. And 2 women have been charged with criminal damage after Just Stop Oil activists sprayed private jets with orange paint at Stansted Airport. 28-year-old Jennifer Kowalski and 22-year-old Cole MacDonald are both due to appear at Chelmsford Magistrates Court tomorrow. They're alleged to have caused more than £5,000 worth of damage in the incident on Thursday. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Patrick.
Welcome along. There are very serious questions about who Sir Keir Starmer really is. He's been nicknamed Sir Flip-Flop. He claims that he's changed his views because he decided to put country before party. Last night, he said this.
Just answer this yes or no. When you said Jeremy Corbyn would make a good Prime Minister, did you mean it?
Look, he would be a better Prime Minister. Well, look what we got, Boris Johnson. A man who made massive promises, didn't keep them, and then had to leave Parliament in disgrace.
But then today, he refused to double down on that.
The choice at the last election, before the electorate, was not a good choice. You had Boris Johnson, who won and then 3 years later was thrown out of Parliament for breaking the rules. You had Jeremy Corbyn, who is now expelled from the Labour Party. That's why I have been so determined to change the Labour Party and to make sure that that changed Labour Party puts forward a credible manifesto for growth, so that at this election there will be a real choice between carrying on with the failure of the last 14 years or turning the page and rebuilding the country.
OK, I mean, this could be a sign that Sir Keir is worried about losing the left of his party. It emerged that the local Labour Party leader in Corbyn's constituency was actually out campaigning for Jeremy Corbyn. But it could be seen as quite concerning. If Corbyn had beaten Boris, he'd have had to handle the COVID pandemic. How do we think he would have done with that? The Brexit deal needed to be finalised. Jeremy Corbyn was a lifelong Brexiteer, but miraculously became a Remainer after the referendum. How do you think he would have dealt with that? Putin invaded Ukraine. How do you reckon Corbyn would have done in that situation? And let's be honest, Jeremy Corbyn would have likely made Israel an enemy over Britain when it came to Gaza. Let's just have a little look at who else would have been involved in this Jeremy Corbyn government, shall we? We would have had Diane Abbott as Home Secretary, Emily Thornberry as Foreign Secretary and John McDonnell as Chancellor. Is it not a concern that the man who could be about to be our Prime Minister seems to think that that cabinet would have been better than the one that we had in 2019? What do we actually know about Sir Keir Starmer's views here? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. Former BBC and ITV chief political correspondent John Sargent, former Apprentice star Joanna Jargio and political commentator Alex Armstrong. Alex, I'll start with you. I mean, when it comes to Sir Keir Starmer and Jeremy Corbyn, do we have any idea what he thinks? Is it not a worry that he genuinely might think that Jeremy Corbyn would have been a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson?
Well, he clearly does think that. He wouldn't have said it otherwise, surely. He thinks it. I think he must have realised, and his advisers must have said, after that little stint and the laughter that came from the audience, hey, look, you sound a bit silly. You're the bloke who endorsed Jeremy Corbyn for Prime Minister and backed his manifesto. I mean, Sir Flip-Flop is the perfect thing to say about him because he constantly changes his opinion with whatever the wind is on the day. I mean, he only changed his opinion on trans rights the other week when Tony Blair said it. So, you know, this is a bloke you can't trust, is it?
Well, this is the issue, John, isn't it? It's trust when it comes to Sir Keir Starmer. He's built his whole thing about being Mr Forensic. We don't really know where he stands on anything. He plays with the wind.
No, this is, I'm afraid, it's where the clash, really, of the Westminster culture, which is about tribal loyalty, essentially. If you want to get anything done in Britain, you've got to combine Westminster. The Tories have shown what happens if you don't do that. You get extreme chaos for a long period. So I think all Keir Starmer's instincts are to think we must pull together And, of course, that means in party terms at Westminster, you pull behind your leader. There's another point, too. He must now increasingly feel he will be Prime Minister in 2 weeks' time. And what will he have to do then? He will have to call on a whole lot of people on the Labour side, some of whom will actually be against him.
Yeah.
And he's got to make sure that they say, look, right or wrong, go behind the leader. If you want to change another party, cross the floor of the House, have a by-election in your seat and so on. But that sort of rather rigid way of looking at the world, I'm afraid, is the Westminster way, and I was there for many years observing this, and you could see that the actual critical question was, which side are you on? Are you in the government side or the opposition side? So if you then put him into his first election campaign and you ask him this sort of question, he then gets completely confused.
Yeah, but he's not... He keeps saying he's changed the Labour Party. He's not changed the Labour Party. Loads of people still support Jeremy Corbyn. The person who's the local Islington North Labour leader there was out campaigning. She hid in a bush when it turned out that someone had rumbled her, for goodness sake. He would have obviously supported Jeremy Corbyn. He did support him a couple of times.
But can you imagine, though, Patrick, if you'd even said a year or so ago that Jeremy Corbyn be out of the Labour Party, not allowed to stand, I mean, that would have seemed quite a shake-up. That would have been an amazing shake-up.
What exactly is Jeremy Corbyn? You can dislike his policies, but the way that people talk about him is as if he's like an enemy of the country and he's done something absolutely terrible. He's not the one that was saying pile the bodies high when people were dying and people's grandparents. He's not the one that was neglectful all the way through the COVID pandemic. He's not the one that has lied time and time and time again when it comes to his promises. Boris Johnson is the type of person who's actually had that record. So, this fantasy, and it almost seems as if the country is stopped being granular and actually having evidence for why they hate Jeremy Corbyn.
Come back to that. Would Jeremy Corbyn have dealt with some of those key flashpoints better than Boris Johnson?
Absolutely.
No, he absolutely wouldn't have. Come on, let's be honest.
No,
he's ideologically driven. So Jeremy Corbyn is not a pragmatist, let's be honest. He is driven by his ideology. So he would have had all these people around him telling him, oh, you better do it this is the socialist way to do it, Jeremy. And that's the difference. It's the reason why Jeremy Corbyn never got elected in the first place, because he is a socialist to the max, isn't he?
But when it comes to the things that have actually affected the country and its population, the COVID pandemic, you can't tell me that Jeremy Corbyn would have been necking pints.
But we won't know, right?
No,
we won't know. But what I will say about this...
But what I will say... Just say, on this, for a lot of people, necking pints is not actually the central issue. It's things like lockdowns. It was things like the COVID jab. It was all of this stuff, which many people do think that Boris Johnson
didn't want to do
got wrong. And that's the point. So would Jeremy Corbyn have actually been worse on that?
Be honest,
well, look, I don't know, but it seems to me from Labour's position during COVID that they would have locked us down for longer and harder. So let's be real. That's the position. And Keir Starmer, someone, he said he supported Jeremy Corbyn and has followed through on those policies and said, I'm surprised we would still be in bloody lockdown today if it wasn't for Keir Starmer.
I agree that maybe Labour would have locked us down for longer, but maybe the difference is they would have locked us down sooner, which meant that maybe the pandemic wouldn't have gone on for as longer, whereas Boris Johnson delayed that.
I don't know.
That doesn't add up.
I think, go on, Johnny, you were...
No, I was just saying that, if you think of Jeremy Corbyn's personality, he's a campaigner. Now, he may say that's good, but it doesn't make him a good Prime Minister. He would not have been a good Prime Minister. He finds it extremely difficult to take in other people. He has a line that he follows, left line. He's proud of the fact that his views don't change. Now, for most people, if you're trying to run a government, you have to change. And when there's an epidemic that we had to suffer from, everyone had to just think, my goodness me, I mustn't have hard and fast views. This thing is changing so rapidly, we've got to adapt to it.
Jeremy Corbyn is a man that loves to bow down to big institutions and socialist institutions like the WEF, for example, you know. The WHO would have had their grip on Britain, and any policy that came out, they would never be allowed to question the science.
I do put it to you, Joanna, when it comes to Keir Starmer, he's changed his views on Brexit, he's changed his stance on Jeremy Corbyn, he's changed his definition of what a working person is. He's changed his definition of what a woman is. I mean, he's just a liar, isn't he?
I don't think necessarily. I completely admit that, you know,
Joanna.
I completely admit.
Flip-flop.
No, okay, yeah, he's flip-flopped on a few things. I admit that. But I don't think that makes him a categorical liar. I think that, you know, in the political landscape, things have changed. So things that seem like he's flip-flopping is because the economy's changed, for example. So if he's made a U-turn on something, certain things he's had an excuse. When it comes to what he thinks about things personally, like what is a woman and whatever, then I think that that's a bit, you know, I kind of squint when I look at him when it comes to stuff like that. But really important stuff when it comes to policies that people say, oh, I don't know what Keir Starmer stands for. I think that's completely different.
I don't think he goes the full term. He's on a personal popularity rating of around 51%, unpopularity rate, sorry, of about 51% at the moment. And that's considering that he's about to potentially win a 200-seat majority. I think John highlighted earlier on some of the fractures within that Labour Party. It'll be interesting to see how they come to the fore. John, do you think Sir Keir Starmer goes the full 5 years?
Well, it's going to be very hard for him because, of course, yes, he gets in with an enormous majority, but the moment that happens, people think, oh, right, I don't need to support him. Let's object to this, let's object to that, let's form factions. And goodness me, we've seen it under the Conservatives. When you think of the majority they had, that within a few weeks ago they had a majority of 80, for goodness sake. But did they manage to mess all that up by arguing the whole thing?
Can I just say that Keir Starmer will last if he actually does bring the parties together and if he doesn't badmouth Jeremy Corbyn? Because when you look at in the US... No, but when you look at in the US, what I think that Biden has done really well is not kind of alienate people who are more at the left of the party. So he's kind of tried to bring other people with him, you know, the Bernie Sanders type of camp, and that has worked for him. But whereas when you look at Hillary Clinton, even though she didn't win, when everything went, you know, went wrong for her, she then started slating that side. So I think that he should learn from the parties that in the US and how that's worked out for them, because Biden's been able to get things over the line a lot better.
Wander around completely naked in the White House at some point.
Party management, John is absolutely right. Party management is going to be right there the moment he starts, from day one.
Joanna's just nailed it, right? The party's going to go more left, right? Let's be honest, this is a big charade at the moment. No, that's exactly what you said. They're going to have to appease the left. They're going to go further left. Just you watch. They're going to go further left. And what happens when they go further left is the public can go, no, we don't like this. And I'm telling you, I used to work for the Labour Party. Bear in mind, I know I'm not lefty anymore, but I used to work for the Labour Party, and I hear all the sources say that Angela Rayner's scratching. I have, but I'm not a politician. And Angela Rayner is scratching on the doors. She will be scratching on the doors of Number 10. Just you wait and see. She will be gunning for the top job within months.
Yeah, but
I was only 21.
No, but it's a question of credibility and whether or not we can believe a single word that Keir Starmer says. The Guardian has seen internal Labour documents today confirmed by senior sources which scope radical changes to both capital gains and inheritance tax. They are going to be ramping up tax absolutely big time. And he sits there and he says, well, not on working people. Then he's changed his definition of what a working person is.
But what happens to them if the market response is bad? What do they do then? We're back in the world of Liz Truss. So don't. But
he's talking like this. This is the media bias.
I know.
This is the media bias. He can build an entire manifesto, an economic manifesto around, I'm just going to go for growth and that'll cover everything. With zero evidence that that'll work. And no one has a go at it for that.
Everybody knows the position they're going to take over, if they do take over, is going to be extremely narrow. They have not got very much room for manoeuvre. They know that. Everybody else knows
But they're hiding the truth, and the IFS put out a massive video in a statement saying both the major parties, by the way, but Labour are doing it far worse. They're saying they're not going to raise your taxes, but they are going to raise your taxes. They're saying we'll protect income tax.
Everybody knows they're going to, because the bans aren't going to be unfrozen.
And I reckon they will fall back ultimately on that thing. When they realise that they've got to do that, they will go, well, are you relatively well off then? Well, do you have a house? Well, you think you should pay tax, shouldn't you? You should pay more tax. And I know that some people, Joanna particularly, might think that's a great idea, but there's a lot of people who work very hard for that stuff. But I'm going to go to the candidates list now for the constituency of Islington North. Jeremy Corbyn, Independent. Paul Josling, Independent. Vikas Agarwal, Liberal Democrats. Karen Harris, Conservative. Praful Nargand, Labour. Sheridan Cates, Greens. And Martin Nelson, Reform UK. Now, coming up, Nigel Farage has declared war on Ofcom for supposedly suppressing reform coverage. Are the establishment absolutely, completely, necessarily asleep to his popularity amongst the young and the old and the working class and loads of other people?
Follow him down.
Yes!
There we go.
Yes!
They're young, they're full of enthusiasm, they're optimistic.
Call the Stingrays, they're going places. Anyway, I will ask the Deputy Leader of Rejoin EU, Richard Morley, whether he can actually get his head around the fact that Mr Farage might be quite popular. But up next, Rishi Sunak has pledged to come down strong on any national service dissenters.
That's looking at driving licences, other access to finance, all sorts of other things.
All right, then. What do you think should happen to young people who refuse to take part in national service? Hang them and flog them or not? CEO of Youth Vote, Alex Cairns, goes head-to-head with former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram. And that's next. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The new BBC Director of Sport, who's a man called Alex K. Jelski, who's downplayed fears raised by sports women about biological men competing in female categories. And he's also called Martina Navratilova, I've got to say, has to be probably the most successful woman tennis player in history, and a very brave woman too. She escaped the Iron Curtain and she came out. And Sharon Davis, he says, are not experts on the issue.
At the same time, transgender US swimmer Leah Thomas has lost her legal battle and been told that she cannot compete at the Olympics.
So Leah Thomas made an appeal to World Aquatics, who have this rule in place that says that they protect the female category, as does athletics and world cycling. And because Leah doesn't actually qualify, because Leah isn't training, so she's not even someone that would be potentially part of the Olympic team, they've just said that, you know, you don't qualify to be able to bring this case. It's been thrown out on a technicality, thank goodness, and which means that, you know, swimming will not have any males beating elite females in Paris this summer, which was particularly good for me, bearing in mind that I now have to be very careful about what I'm allowed to say and not say. We're not allowed to use the words biological male, transitioned male. I mean, just every single possible way that we could explain that the person in the race wasn't a female, and it only affects women. It doesn't affect men. You know, females that identify as male are no risk to men's sport in any shape or form. It's just women that are losing their opportunities. The thing I take the most offence to, and this is very serious, and this needs to be dealt with by the BBC, and this is why I wrote to Tim Davie. In that article, he compared males that are identifying as women in women's sport to Jamaican and Ethiopian females being allowed to compete.
What?
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, has Nigel Farage found a way to engage Britain's politically disillusioned youngsters? But first, would it be fair for Rishi Sunak to sanction young people who refuse to take part in national service? It's time for the head-to-head. Well, Rishi Sunak set the cat amongst the pigeons during last night's leaders' debate when he claimed that young people who try to dodge his compulsory national service plans could face sanctions.
We'll have a set of sanctions and incentives, and we will look at the models that are existing around Europe to get the appropriate mix of those. There's a range of different options that exist.
For example?
There's all sorts of things that people do across Europe, whether that's looking at driving licences, other access to finance, all sorts of other things. There's a range of things, and we will have a Royal Commission look at all of those, come back to the government and recommend what the appropriate mix of incentives and sanctions is.
It comes just weeks after the Conservative leader first announced the policy in a bid to woo back voters who were originally drifting to Nigel Farage's Reform UK. Under the plan, every 18-year-old will either have to enrol in the military for 12 months or spend 1 weekend each month volunteering in the community. Needless to say, the policy was torn to shreds by young people on social media.
Can make her get ready with me, then you can make her get ready with me on the front line. And if you can rot in bed, then you can rot in a trench. Born in the noughties, but made to do national service.
Some people might argue they are exactly the kind of people who need a bit of national service, but tonight I am asking, would it be fair for Rishi Sunak to sanction young people who refuse to take part? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/yoursay. Tweet me and GB News. Go and vote in our poll. You know how it works by now. But first, going head-to-head on this is the CEO of Youth Vote, Alex Cairns, and former senior military intelligence officer, Philip Ingram. Chaps, thank you very much. Alex, I will start with you on this. Look, if someone wants to bunk off military service, and it is the law, then why should we all be paying their student loan?
I think this is an absolutely ridiculous idea. We've got to a situation now where the government are looking at the declining number of people that are leaving the military, are leaving the NHS, and they're saying to themselves, what's the solution? Let's force a bunch of 18-year-olds that don't want to be there to have to step up for the country. Bear in mind, lots of young people already did their part. You know, during the lockdown, they stayed at home to make sure that we could protect, you know, the elderly. You know, they did a lot of volunteering, as the Conservatives will put it, in their community. So forcing young people, because, you know, the government don't pay the military or the NHS staff a proper wage, and they need to get people in.
What volunteering did young people do during COVID?
There was, you know, I know lots of people in my community that made sure that, you know, some elderly people got their food parcels, you know, carrying shopping, you know, lots of people do.
So with respect, doing that 1 weekend a month is not a massive hassle, is it?
But I think, you know, I'm very surprised that he's decided of all age groups, let's attack the young people, let's get them to step up, because the wider point here is not, you know, listen, you know, lots of young people actually take an active part in this in their community. What we're saying here is, you know, we're going to force them to do a 12-month military or NHS service, and we're literally, if they don't do it, we're going to take away their driving licence, or we're going to, you know, it's ridiculous.
Well, is there not something in this, Philip? I mean, you know, former senior military intelligence officer, I do wonder if some young people have been quite short-sighted about this. I was talking to someone in the military the other day about this very policy, and they were saying there's loads of cool stuff that you can do, things that are involved with, like, AI, things that are involved in cyber security as well. You're not all necessarily picking up a gun and going and getting trench foot, are you?
Yeah, 100%. I'm not a fan of compulsory service in the military, so conscription for the military. But the ideas that the government have come out with, I think, have been rushed in. So that's what's causing the problems. But I lived in Germany for many years, and Germany had conscription, and the conscription was either into the military for 12 months or into providing help to the civil side of society for 2 years. And that worked brilliantly. And it set young people up with a lot of skills on their CV. It allowed them to prove to employers of the future that they could go out and do a job. It gave them skills for life. It allowed them to make friends for life in an environment that was different to what they got beforehand. So I think there's real mileage in what the Prime Minister has proposed. And of course, if you're going to make something compulsory, you have to give incentives for people to do it, or you have to give disincentives for people not to do it. And therefore, you know, the simple ones from my perspective would be, you know, don't allow people who are refusing to go into national service to get benefits, and don't allow them to get a student loan. You know, that would incentivize people, therefore, to go in and contribute to society.
Yeah, indeed. And Alex, you know, I want to know, why are so many 18 to 24-year-olds lazy, feckless and unemployed?
To make a statement like that, I think is absolutely ridiculous. You know, lots of young people, whether they're doing apprenticeships, whether they're going to university, let's remember
or getting benefits.
You know, let's remember 20 years ago, we actually saw a situation where young people could go to university and had minimal tuition fees. Under the coalition government, the tuition fees went up, and now we see young people that want to get educated and are being almost penalised for it. You know, lots of young people, there's absolutely no data to suggest that young people are sitting at home home,
well, the
unemployed.
unemployment figures, well, there's at least 13% of people aged 16 to 24 are unemployed. In fact, there's a load more of them, actually, that are signed off sick as well, which I know a lot of people are very, very dubious about. I mean, there is record levels of unemployment when it comes to people aged 18 to 24. I mean, it's quite astonishing, that those numbers.
Patrick,
I've got to see Richard to get involved. Go on, Philip.
Patrick, there's a better incentive for this. What you're doing is you're giving a foundation, and you're giving everyone an equal foundation for them to build on. So those that don't want to do military service, 1 weekend a month isn't huge, but you're giving people that foundation that they can then build their future life, their future career, and employers can measure them against. And those that want to go into the military, and it's voluntary to go into the military is having difficulty recruiting. A lot of people get a try before you buy. This is a way of doing it. And might suddenly decide that, actually, this will give me a good career, will give me the skills that I want to do, and get people in. It's a very reasonable way of recruiting. So, but what you're doing is you're giving that constant baseline for everyone. So you haven't got that differential across the country. Everyone's getting the same start in life, and that can only be a good thing for youngsters.
All right. I mean, Alex, so you want, a youth vote. Do you want 16-year-olds to be able to vote, do you?
Yes.
So you'd like 16-year-olds to be able to vote, all right?
Taxpayers, yeah.
Yeah, well, OK, all right. How many 16-year-olds pay a load of tax?
Any 16-year-old that works is subject to tax, so therefore we should be giving them the ability...
Not if they earn below, I think it's about £15,000 a year.
But a 9-year-old can pay tax.
Oh, but anyone that's 50-year-old that doesn't earn enough money, I mean, I don't understand what the argument here is, right? The government, what they're doing here is they don't have enough people to work in the NHS, they don't have enough people to work in the military, they don't pay them properly, they don't look after them when they come out of it, as we've seen with lots of, military personnel that go homeless, and actually they're deciding, what's the solution? Let's force a bunch of 18-year-olds that aren't going to vote for the Tories anyway to go and do military service or NHS. It's nothing to do with CV enhancement or helping them. They don't care about them. If they cared about them, they'd be helping them with making sure that landlords don't absolutely take them up with rent increases and helping them get in the housing market. It's nothing to do with helping them with the CV, development. It's absolute nonsense.
OK, Philip, go on, come back to that.
Well, we've gone around on so many different subjects that aren't related. It will give them an ability to have a common baseline of CV. It will give people the ability to have friends for life from different areas. That will then allow them to have, and those that decide to join the military will get paid. I suspect a lot of those that go into the voluntary sectors will get paid as well. But if they don't, then they should get the benefits that enable them in that. That will then get them the finances that they need for a period of time to get into the housing ladder and to move forward and help them with their career development. But none of these things that my other guest has turned around and said are related. It's not necessarily just a Tory thing. As I've said, I am against national service going into the military, but I think there's some legs in this, and I base that on the fact that I've seen it for many, many years in other European countries, and actually it works.
Well, that is a point. I'll give the final word to you on this, Alice. If it's good enough for people in Sweden, a load of Nordic countries, in countries like Germany, etc., a load of EU countries, well, why is it too awful for British teens?
It's a completely different situation. In Sweden, for example, young people get given a lot more support. Their NHS or their services there are much better. And actually, everyone is basically trying to give.
Why are you all take? Sorry, just to say this. Why are you all take? Why don't you want to do something for your country?
Young people, Patrick. Young people. Let me tell you, young people have done a lot for their country. As I mentioned,
stayed indoors during COVID.
Yeah, and actually, but actually, let's be serious about this. The guest makes the point about, they're going to earn enough, to get on the housing ladder. They're not. With the starting salary for people in the NHS or the military is definitely not enough, right? Young people are fed up being lectured and called lazy. And actually, why is it 18-year-olds that need to step up? I know lots of people that are in their mid-30s. Why are they not being asked to help the country?
Because they haven't done this when they were 18, and they don't have that sense of duty in life. And the thing that's missing in society today is a sense of duty and a sense of contributing to society. As Patrick said, it's all take, gimme, and not give anything back.
Young people don't take anything.
But for free.
What are young people taking? You know, they've been given tuition fees that are ridiculous. You know, young people are trying to get on in life. You know, they've got plenty of career opportunities at the moment. Lots of them do apprenticeships. I guarantee you, I don't have the data to hand, but there's no way that 18 to 24-year-olds are the ones that are taking from the government on benefits. I guarantee you, it's the older demographics. You know, well, what about the triple pensions? You know, what about the other things that cost the government lots of money? What about the wars that we're funding? You know, and you're saying that young people
there's a lack of foundation, and there has been for many, many years. Give that foundation in, and you're then building a more coherent and a more capable and a society that's got a sense of duty to it. That's what it was a long time ago. We need to get back to that again.
All right, good, guys. We asked for a head-to-head. We definitely got one. I massively, massively appreciate the strength of views on both sides here. I know that I will have held a mirror up to literally the nation's views on this, so thank you very, very much. So CEO of Youth Vote, Alex Cairns there, former senior military intelligence officer, Philip Ingram. Look, who do you agree with? Would it be fair for Rishi Sunak to sanction young people who refuse to take part in national service? Andrew on X says it wouldn't be fair at all. Plus, making government departments do more work when they barely function now is a pie-in-the-sky idea. Charlie says refusing shouldn't be an option. OK, your vote is in. Oh, here we go. 50% of you agree that it is fair for Rishi Sunak to sanction young people. 50% of you say it isn't. That is a first here on one of these polls. I've been waiting for this day, and it has now finally come. It's a 50-50 split. Good stuff. Coming up, I speak to a druid who is furious with Just Stop Oil's idiotic attack on one of Britain's most precious cultural sites. Will he curse the eco-mob? Find out shortly, but next, as Nigel Farage boasts that support for Reform UK is exploding amongst Gen Z voters.
Follow them, Dan?
Yes!
There we go.
Yes!
They're young, they're full of enthusiasm, they're optimistic.
Are the establishment again failing to recognise the popularity of the Nigel Farage movement, or is it a load of hot air? Rejoin the EU's Richard Morley is on next, and it's probably going to kick off. Stay tuned.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News and weather update from the Met Office. This weekend will be a little bit cloudier than the week has been, but it's still going to be warm. But next week will be even warmer. For the time being, though, we've got a few weather fronts still moving in from the west. That's going to introduce quite a lot of cloud from western areas, but also some rain through this evening for parts of Wales, northwestern England, much of Scotland, down to the southwest as well through this evening. And that's going to push eastwards through the night, introducing more cloud to central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Now, behind that, it does turn much clearer across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. We could see temperatures as low as 5 degrees for Northern Ireland, but for many of us, another fairly mild start to the day. However, sunshine is going to be slightly more limited very first thing tomorrow, but for much of Scotland, it should be a fairly bright start to the day. They will likely see a bit more cloud across eastern areas of Scotland, perhaps into the far northwest as well, a risk of the odd shower, but for many areas, Northern Ireland and Scotland, a bright start to the day. Elsewhere, across parts of northeast England, a cloudy start to the day. Some drizzly rain as well across eastern areas of England, but for much of Wales and the southwest, still fairly bright. And that sunshine will become a bit more widespread throughout Saturday. The cloud's going to break up and lift up, and that will allow a few showers to break out here and there across eastern areas of England. But I think most of us should stay dry through the day on Saturday. And in that sunshine, still feeling fairly warm. We've got very high UV levels and very high pollen levels. Temperatures climbing towards 24 degrees across the southeast, but widely into the low 20s. Another warm day to come on Sunday. There is more cloud arriving from the west through the day, though, so it will likely be another cloudy start, this time across Wales, northwestern England and into the southwest. But once again, it will brighten up as the day goes on. And in that sunshine, it will feel very warm, turning even warmer, though, Monday and into Tuesday as temperatures climb to the mid to high 20s.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, coming up, after Just Stop Oil spray-painted Stonehenge earlier this week and a couple of private jets as well, I'll be joined by a druid, though, who has some very harsh words for eco-activists. He obviously feels very strongly about Stonehenge. Be interesting to get his views. But first, Nigel Farage today declared war on Ofcom over the regulator's rules that dictate broadcasters only need to give Reform UK 8% of coverage. That's despite some polls putting the party as high as 20%. Indeed, since he announced his decision to stand at the election, Farage has received a less than cosy welcome from the usual lovey media types.
The following night in Birmingham, we have yet another Question Time special, much like tonight, but it will be with the Green Party co-leader Adrian Ramsey and Reform UK's leader Nigel Farage, and that will be on at 8 o'clock. So if you want to be all sort of interesting noises from the audience here.
He has said that this is now a matter of national security.
Nigel Farage with his customary inflammatory language there at a Reform UK press conference.
Yeah, I mean, Sky News chose to, I think, describe him, did they, as far right? I think they also said it was a humbling experience for him when he was, assaulted by a milkshake in the street. But despite that, Reform UK has actually soared in popularity, especially among Gen Z voters. So these are the young people, aren't they? With the most recent YouGov poll putting the party at 15% among 18 to 24-year-olds. Now, Farage is by far the most popular UK politician on the social media site TikTok, with videos like this one propelling him to a whopping 776,000 followers. And that song by American rapper Eminem, Without Me, was released back in 2002. It's now back in the charts, OK? Such is Nigel Farage's popularity. I'm joined now by the Deputy Leader of Rejoin the EU, Richard Morley. Richard, look, thank you very, very much. I mean, this must be killing you inside to see that Nigel Farage is actually really popular, especially with young people.
Well, I think it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that he's very popular amongst young people. Yes, the poll suggests that he has somewhere between 12 and 15% of this Generation Z behind him. But of course, let's remember that leaves round about 80% who are not behind him. The vast majority of young people, I'm afraid, are with the Labour Party because of their policies. They may follow Nigel Farage, a small percentage of them, but I think that could be more out of amusement than actually support for him.
Is that just quite an arrogant, out-of-touch thing for you to say?
Well, you may think so, but I think that there are lots of reasons why young people will reject Nigel Farage at the ballot box. Let's face it, he's no friend to young people, is he? His measures that he wants to adopt, i.e. a complete endorsement of Brexit, which goes against the young people's wish generally that most young people want to rejoin. They want to have the opportunities to live and work in Europe as they did before, is not exactly in tune with their thinking. The zero carbon
I would argue that maybe his main thing is that he actually wants to try to protect the future of this country. And maybe, Richard, maybe there are an increasing number of young people now in Britain who really, really, really do not like the direction of travel in this country. And that's what he's tapping into.
Well, I'm sure they don't like the direction of travel after 14 years of this terrible Tory government. Of course they don't like the direction of travel. But that doesn't mean to say they want Nigel Farage's direction of travel either. Certainly they don't want him when it comes to his net zero abandonment ideas. Anybody who suggests that it's good for young people, that Britain should abandon our drive towards restricting carbon emissions when it's their future that lies on the line, much more than ours. Young people today of Generation Z have got to live through the most unimaginable temperature rises unless we do something to stop.
Why is it, though, Richard,
abandoning net zero, which is Nigel Farage's big idea, is the biggest harm that you could possibly do to young people.
But why is it then, Richard, that the latest poll shows that Reform are on 20% of the vote, and the Lib Dems, who are the only party who've openly come out, really, and said if you vote for us, it's a way of paving our way back into European membership, are on about 12 or 13%.
Yeah, but I read today in the papers that a lot of people suspect that Keir Starmer's policy is going to lean much more towards Europe than what he's saying at the moment. And indeed, I suspect it will do, because economic realities will force us to look more towards Europe. And yes, readdress the treaty that we've signed with Europe over trade, because quite frankly, it doesn't benefit us at all. We've got to go back and rethink it. Brexit was extremely badly managed. Even Nigel
But you're about to lose your second massive vote, Richard. I mean, I get that you might not want to admit this on national television, but you're about to lose your second massive vote, aren't you? Because, you know, you've got here Nigel Farage, Mr Brexit, standing on the kind of ticket that you've just said there, who is potentially on course to get double the number of votes of the only other party that's saying they want to rejoin the European Union.
Yes, but you know that these opinion polls are indicators of public dissatisfaction rather than actual fact indications of what they're actually going to vote for on the day. I'm sure that when we come and see it, Reform UK is not going to get the seats that it expects to.
Look at the number of votes,
the Conservatives are not going to do as badly as everybody thinks they're going to do, and they will remain the opposition. It won't be Nigel Farage who will be the opposition, it will be the leader of the Conservative Party, whoever that will be.
OK, yeah, I think it's in terms of just a pure number of votes. I mean, the way our voting system is here, absolutely. I mean, on that as well, presumably, you're probably in favour of some kind of electoral reform, are you? I don't know whether that's PR or whatever it like. But also, you've got Nigel Farage now standing in this country. If we were to do what the Liberal Democrats did at the moment, we would be walking back into a European Union that I dare say you would describe as far right, would you?
Well, I think all countries go through political ups and downs in terms of left and right. Yes, there is a current movement in some countries in Europe towards the right, and I can see that may progress to others. But it's not a permanent move. It's a reaction against the crisis that we face at this moment, both internationally and in terms of the climate change problems that we have. I'm quite certain that this
it's a reaction to the illegal migrant crisis, Richard. That's what it is, isn't it? It's a reaction to the illegal migrant crisis. That's why people voted that way on continental Europe, and that's why people really want to vote for Nigel Farage, isn't it? And I don't know if maybe you want to do that much about the illegal migrant crisis, do you?
No, I do agree with you that there has been an enormous concern amongst the general public about the illegal migrants. Of course, this has stimulated a great feeling of crisis and therefore stimulated the votes towards the right-wing parties who have methods of dealing with it which are perhaps stronger than the left-wing parties. That's quite possible. However, whether or not they can actually solve it is another issue. There has been no successful solution to the migrant crisis.
Because unfortunately, people of your political persuasion tend to try to do everything they possibly can to scupper that, don't they, Richard? That's part of the issue, I think. But look, we are going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. As Richard Morley there is the deputy leader of Rejoin the EU. Coming up, I bring you exclusive reaction to the first of GB News' Vote 2024, the Leaders interview with Sir Keir Starmer, plus TV presenter and conservationist Chris Packham has sent a message to a superstar singer.
Could send a very symbolic gesture to millions of people by saying that she was going to stop using those jets.
Yeah, and he got completely ignored. I'll reveal all later. But next, member of the Druid Grade and spiritual healer Adrian Rook, who is furious with Just Stop Oil for their Stonehenge attack. He joins me. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we've got two fantastic individuals who have invented a teddy bear to help children who are suffering with mental health.
Yes, so Lynn and Samantha Crilly came up with the idea for the Trouble Muncher toy following Samantha's own battle with an eating disorder and OCD.
Yes, the teddy comes with a notepad and encourages its owners to write down what's troubling them, and then they can pop the note into the rucksack on the bear's back.
I struggled with mental health most of my life, actually. And, oh no, it's fine. I've got one. I feel quite sorry for you. But, and one thing I always did was message my mum, and it was a thought disassociation kind of technique. I would message you, even now, I message you thoughts that come into my mind, but massively when I was younger. And I thought, what happens if you're younger and you don't have this?
Yeah, and I think in today's technology-fueled world, I think we go back to basics, and it just helps them to process by writing it down. Everything's so instant these days.
So it's like an indirect way of telling your parents how you're feeling, what you're going through. Such a great idea. What's the feedback been from parents who have got a trouble muncher for their kids? What you got any stories?
It's been really good. In one household, he sits on the kitchen side, and I think during the day, the parents, the children put their worries in or at night, and then they know that their parents will look at it during the day. And it's gone into some schools as well.
You'd imagine you'd want one of these trouble munchers in every classroom and in every school up and down the country, because children who are being bullied, for example, who feel like they can't tell their parents, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. This is such an important tool, isn't it, for children to communicate that?
Yeah, well, you were saying Mum's a mental health counsellor, and you had a young child who had Snapchat AI. So you talk to an AI in Snapchat, and that's what they talk to now.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, thousands flocked to Stonehenge in the early hours of this morning to celebrate the summer solstice. That celebration comes just days after two activists from Just Stop Oil were arrested for spraying orange paint over the Neolithic structures at Stonehenge. Well, I'm very pleased to say I'm joined now by a member of the Druid Grade and a spiritual healer, Adrian Ruck. Thank you very much, Adrian. Tremendous to have you on the show. How do you feel about what Just Stop Oil did?
I think it was a somewhat ill-thought-out stunt, so childish, and risked permanent damage to one of our most sacred monuments. Just Stop Oil have obviously got a relevant point that a lot of the Druidic ideology would agree with. The world is in trouble. We need to rethink how we relate to the planet, but this kind of action causes more people to pull away from support of, the work to deal with climate change than brings in, I'm afraid.
Well, can you educate me a little bit on what Stonehenge means to the Druids? Because, if Just Stop Oil had done that to a church or a mosque or a synagogue or something, people would be saying, it's a bit racist or it's bang out of order. But, how important is Stonehenge to you?
Well, Stonehenge is very important. It's important to all people of a Druidic or pagan-based faith. It's our greatest ancient temple. That said, Richard, it's not the only temple in the UK, and people celebrated solstice last night in different stone circles all the way across the land and on hilltops and different venues. Stonehenge has a particular significance. It's in our subconscious, it's there, it's magnificent. And of course, it links us back to a past. It's a time clock. It brings in the solstice, marks the wheel of the year. And the people I've spoken to were genuinely upset, and a lot of those people would be, I think, certainly on the side of the ideology around climate change, and that something has to be done. We can't ignore it. And
I mean, what would your message be? What is the kind of Druid message to Just Stop Oil now, really?
Well, they need to rethink some of their ways of trying to draw attention to what is a global crisis, and replan their protest that actually brings the general public behind them rather than isolates them and pushes them away.
I mean, I don't know, are things like curses a thing in the Druid grade?
No, we don't do things like that. Druidry is a nature-based spiritual tradition. It encourages us to foster a relationship with the land and deepen our relationship with the land. We come from the land.
In a way, Just Stop Oil have literally attacked one of the most important sites to a group of people who conceivably, on paper, would be the most sympathetic to Just Stop Oil.
They have. You're right. You're spot on. And so, really, they've shot themselves in the foot. So it's very counterproductive, unfortunately, for them. But it is what it is. And thankfully, there wasn't any permanent damage done to the stones. If there had been, it would have been a bigger tragedy. But, you know, from a politically sensible point of view, it's gone down like a lead balloon, really.
Well, I'm not surprised. And can I just ask you, and we are going to have to be quite quick on this, who made Stonehenge?
Well, Stonehenge was made, they estimate 5,000 years ago. There's varying degrees of consensus as to whether it's not older, but it was made by our ancestors, you know, post-Christian, 3,000 years before. We don't know if it was the Celts, the indigenous people that were here before, probably the indigenous people that lived here before. And it was of huge emotional and spiritual significance to those people. If you think of the work that's gone into creating something like that, it's massive.
I love all the stuff about Stonehenge and everything like this. I get absolutely gripped by it and all the theories behind it and everything. But can I just say a massive thank you, Adrian. All the best. You look after yourself. Take care. It's Adrian Rook. There's a Druid spiritual leader. Coming up, I'm going to be speaking to the 1922 committee chair, Sir Graham Brady. Stay tuned for that.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News and weather update from the Met Office. This weekend will be a little bit cloudier than the week has been, but it's still going to be warm. But next week will be even warmer. For the time being, though, we've got a few weather fronts still moving in from the west. That's going to introduce quite a lot of cloud from western areas, but also some rain through this evening for parts of Wales, northwestern England, much of Scotland, down to the southwest as well through this evening. And that's going to push eastwards through the night, introducing more cloud to central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Now, behind that, it does turn much clearer across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. We could see temperatures as low as 5 degrees for Northern Ireland, but for many of us, another fairly mild start to the day. However, sunshine is going to be slightly more limited very first thing tomorrow, but for much of Scotland, it should be a fairly bright start to the day. They will likely see a bit more cloud across eastern areas of Scotland, perhaps into the far northwest as well. A risk of the odd shower, but for many areas of Northern Ireland and Scotland, a bright start to the day. Elsewhere, across parts of northeast England, a cloudy start to the day. Some drizzly rain as well across eastern areas of England, but for much of Wales and the southwest, still fairly bright. And that sunshine will become a bit more widespread throughout Saturday. The cloud's going to break up and lift up, and that will allow a few showers to break out here and there across eastern areas of England. But I think most of us should stay dry through the day on Saturday. And in that sunshine, still feeling fairly warm. We've got very high UV levels and very high pollen levels. Temperatures climbing towards 24 degrees across the southeast, but widely into the low 20s. Another warm day to come on Sunday. There is more cloud arriving from the west through the day, though, so it will likely be another cloudy start, this time across Wales, northwestern England and into the southwest. But once again, it will brighten up as the day goes on. And in that sunshine, it will feel very warm, turning even warmer, though, Monday and into Tuesday as temperatures climb to the mid to high 20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick. Christys tonight.
Very proud of our country. I'm very proud to sit, in front of the Union Jack.
Is he really that patriotic? Sir Keir Starmer has answered GB News viewers' questions. We'll have reaction from Sir Graham Brady, the former chair of the 1922 committee. Also, is Nigel Farage right that the Tories are morally bankrupt? Plus,
raise the voice of Palestine! Allahu Akbar!
sectarian politics in action as 4 Tories sign a Hindu manifesto. And
could send a very symbolic gesture to millions of people by saying that she was going to stop using those jets.
I reveal which global superstar has made Packham look like an absolute idiot. I'll bring you the first of tomorrow's front pages with my press pack. Former BBC and ITV chief political correspondent John Sargent, former Apprentice star Joanna Jarju, and political commentator Alex Armstrong. Oh yeah, and life is all about balance, isn't it? Oh yeah, and listen to what Nigel Farage had to say about the war in Ukraine.
We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
He also had some rather interesting words to say about our king. Get ready, Britain, here we go. Do you trust a man who takes the knee? Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your headlines. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has urged Rishi Sunak to show some leadership amid allegations of Tory betting on the timing of the general election. 4 people are being investigated by the Gambling Commission, including Laura Saunders, the wife of the Tories' campaign director. Craig Williams, another Conservative candidate, has also admitted to an error of judgment after placing a bet on when the election would take place. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says any lawbreakers will be booted out of the party. Speaking on GB News, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says it shows everything that is wrong with the Tory party.
I think he should come clean and say who knew. He should take immediate action against those that are being investigated, suspend his candidate. If they're my candidate, I'd have had them out the door without their feet touching the ground, and show some leadership on this. It's the first instinct of some of those Tories in relation to a general election. It's not what's good for the country, but how quickly can I get to the bookies and make myself some money. I mean, it tells you everything that's wrong with 14 years of chaos and decline.
Meanwhile, Nigel Farage has suggested the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO. After missing out on last night's BBC Question Time Leader Special, the Reform leader has taken part in an interview with BBC's Nick Robinson.
We provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what we've done as an excuse. I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary-General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansionism.
Now, Boris Johnson has called on Sir Keir Starmer to take back his claim that Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than him. Sir Keir was facing a grilling from members of the public at last night's BBC Question Time Leader Special in York. The ex-Prime Minister, Mr Johnson, wrote in his Daily Mail column that Sir Keir's original claim was utterly terrifying. Mr Johnson said he must take it back, going on to say you can't back Corbyn and back Ukraine at the same time. In other news, in Devon, a schoolboy has been found guilty of attempted murder at Exeter Crown Court. The boy, who can't be named for legal reasons, attacked 2 sleeping students and a teacher with hammers at Blundell School in Tiverton. The 16-year-old admitted assaulting the 2 boys and the housemaster, but claimed he was sleepwalking. And 2 women have been charged with criminal damage after Just Stop Oil activists sprayed private jets with orange paint at Stansted Airport. 28-year-old Jennifer Kowalski and 22-year-old Cole MacDonald are both due to appear at Chelmsford Magistrates Court tomorrow. They're alleged to have caused more than £5,000 worth of damage in the incident yesterday. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Patrick.
Yes, well, a little bit later on, we're going to be picking apart some of Nigel Farage's comments, especially when it came to Putin and also our king as well. But a little earlier, GB News' political editor Christopher Hope sat down with the man hoping to be Prime Minister in 2 weeks' time. That is, of course, the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer. Sir Keir was answering the questions that you sent in, and do keep them coming, because we're going to be doing many more interviews with the other party leaders. Well, Christopher Hope asked the Labour leader if he could guarantee that he would stop the small boats. Now, bear in mind, this interview came just after Keir Starmer had been gazumped by another journalist who said to him, what are you going to do with the Bibby Stockholm? What are you going to do with the Bibby Stockholm? And he couldn't answer it. So here's what he had to say to Christopher.
Look, we want to get those numbers down. Nobody should be making that journey. And the way to do that is to tackle the gangs that are running this vile trade. So we want to set a border security command, a new command, an elite command, bringing together all of our police and law enforcement, which will have new powers, counter-terrorism powers, to smash these gangs.
I don't want to interrupt betting too much, but will you bet me a pint of beer that in year 1 you'll bring down the undercrossings?
Chris, betting in politics
it's not allowed anymore.
is a very, very bad idea.
It doesn't answer the question, does it? It just does not answer the question. Then Mr Starmer was asked about previous comments about private healthcare and the NHS.
Pay for private healthcare to effectively jump the waiting list.
Yes.
I wouldn't. I actually had an operation on my knee some years ago. I waited my turn. But the idea of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is responsible for bringing waiting lists down,
yes,
then saying to the public, but so far as I'm concerned, I'm going to jump the loop.
But you can afford to. Most people on a good wage do afford it and pay for it.
If I am, elected in to serve as Prime Minister, my job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
Interesting. So he's kind of doubling down on that, though. There was quite a funny bit there where Christopher said to him, well, what about members of your cabinet, then? And he said, well, I'm not ideological about this. You think, well, maybe you are. But anyway, Mr Starmer didn't seem so keen to repeat the eye-rousing claim, though, from last night that Jeremy Corbyn would have been a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson.
Last election, we had a very poor choice in 2019. And what transpired was, obviously, Jeremy Corbyn got rejected by the electorate, not the right person, and we've expelled him now from the Labour Party. So that's how far we've changed the Labour Party. Boris Johnson was elected as Prime Minister and a number of years later was booted out of Parliament for breaking the rules. That's why I've been so determined to change the Labour Party to always say country first, party second.
OK, and there's an interesting question here, and this is one thing that I'm going to lead off on with the panel, actually, about whether or not Sir Keir Starmer is actually that patriotic, OK? He was asked directly whether or not he thought he was more patriotic than Nigel Farage.
The very reason I came into politics is to improve our country and improve the lives of millions of people in our country. I'm very proud of our country. I'm very proud to sit in front of the Union Jack. I did it when I represented our country as Chief Prosecutor. But the passion in me, yes, it is perhaps a quiet passion, is to improve this country, to genuinely take it forward. I think most people in this country are reasonable, tolerant, live and let live. They want to get on themselves, they want their family to get on, they want their community to get on, and they want their country to get on. And that's what drives me.
Alex, if he's not patriotic, why did he take his poppy off when he was addressing the British Muslim community?
Well, exactly, Patrick. I mean, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He appeals to whoever he's in front of. That's what he does. And the public aren't stupid. I mean, Farage made a very big point about this and he got a massive round of applause and did very well online as well afterwards because he's absolutely right. Keir Starmer self-describes himself as a shy patriot, whatever that means. And he's only putting all these Union Jacks on his leaflets and on his campaign and his manifesto because he's trying to appeal to Tory voters and to working class people who are patriotic. But we know deep down, the man who backed Jeremy Corbyn is not a patriot. And as you said, taking the poppy off when he shouldn't have done that just to appeal to Muslim voters is completely wrong.
OK, Joanna, do you think he's patriotic?
I think he's patriotic, absolutely, and I think that he's kind of put his money where his mouth is. Not even the right phrase.
It is.
If you look at recently what Rishi Sunak's gone through, coming back early in the D-Day celebrations and things like that, Keir Starmer actually stuck around. So I want to judge people based on their actual actions. And Rishi Sunak has been getting away with saying that he's a patriot for so long when he's talking about, immigration and when it suits him because he knows that it goes with the line that the party, Conservative Party, usually use. But Keir Starmer has actually done it. And part of being a patriot, I think, is acknowledging that we live in a multicultural society and also acknowledging different communities. I'm not saying that it's right if he did take off his poppy, but things like taking the knee, I think, has been completely politicised. And I understand
they
things
politicise it with respect. They published a manifesto, Black Lives Matter.
Well, I understand that people have problems with the Black Lives Matter movement for certain things. I disagree with certain things, but really it's about, the gesture that he was trying to make about what is actually going on when it comes to race relations. And I don't think that he should be, reprimanded for that.
Who do you think is more patriotic, John? Nigel Farage or Sir Keir Starmer?
I think it's a silly question. People go on about, are you patriotic? Well, I mean, in certain circumstances, people are amazingly patriotic, but the best ones, I suppose, don't go on about it. Dr. Johnson, I'm a great fan of Dr. Johnson. I was once president of the Johnson Society. So a lot of what he said, and one of his famous phrases was, patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. Right. And the idea that, you know, you go around saying, well, I've got a Union Jack here, I'm patriotic, it's just silly. We all know what we like about our country. People who are successful in Britain, like Keir Starmer, know perfectly well their whole career is based upon our system, where we get on, and the idea that he's
not all of it. I mean, there
patriotic.
was that time he was representing foreign terror groups in a foreign court.
No, but
well, yes, that did happen.
Lawyers have a duty.
No, he didn't have a duty to do it at that point,
No,
actually,
right,
John. No,
okay.
he didn't have
Well,
to. He did choose
lawyers,
to do it.
No, but hold on a moment. Lawyers, one of their jobs, it's like being a journalist and you're asking the right questions to people you don't like. It's one of those things you might have to do. But the idea that...
You didn't have to do it.
The idea that... Hold on a moment. The idea that somehow Keir Starmer is anti-British or something, or it is so beyond the chances.
And what
it's
does being
completely
a patriot
absurd.
even mean?
Okay.
It's almost as if people think you've got to be proactive about it.
All right, I'm just going to whiz it on, because one of the other things that I think is becoming increasingly obvious at the moment is that Keir Starmer very rarely gives you a straight answer. Now, earlier on in the day, he was asked directly, what are you going to do about the Bibby Stockholm barge? And he was asked about that because previously some members of his cabinet had said they wanted to abolish the barge. They didn't want the barge. So he started by prattling on and saying, well, look, you know, the barge is a visible symbol of our borders are broken. Fine. What are you going to do with the barge? Will you remove the barge? Couldn't answer it at all. And there he was bet. Just a point. Will boat crossings come down in the first year of a Labour government? And he didn't even take that bet. What do you take from that?
Well, I think it's quite telling, isn't it, that he can't actually... He doesn't have a policy to address these issues. We ask him how he's going to stop the boats. He says, smash the gangs. It's like, you know, he's like, this is nonsense, Keir Starmer. This is absolute rubbish, because there's no actual detail on how he's going to do it. This commando force, it already exists. OK, so what new? What's new? And they don't have the answers. But I think we all know what the answer is, why they don't have the answers, Patrick. It's because they don't really want to address this problem.
Well, there is something.
But they're not going to address it, are they? They don't have any political will to do so. The Labour Party itself doesn't like the topic of immigration. It never has done, and it will again lean to the left when it gets into government.
They're talking about it freely. Why are you saying that?
But what policy is there, Joanna?
Well,
what's the policy?
They're talking about tackling the criminal gangs, and you're saying what's changed? What's changed is that they want to up the ante and actually get the intelligence services. We've talked about it before on the show. We've talked about getting the intelligence services involved, which does up the ante. And he's talked about
James Bond rubbish going to go and fight terrorists in North Africa. I mean, come off with it.
What he's saying is that the current situation that we've got with Border Force clearly isn't enough, and he has headed organisations where he's gone after terrorists and succeeded. So if you can go after actual threats like terrorists, then you can do it with the criminal gangs as well.
So you're telling me the Labour Party is going to send military specialists out to go and destroy these gangs somehow with violence?
Not necessarily send them out. Obviously, you'll see more of the detail when that comes out, but it's about having an actual detailed
But why is there no detail now, Joanna? This is the general election. There should be the detail. Where is it?
Come on, do you really think he's going to sit on national television and say, this is what MI5 or MI6...
But why not? That's what the job is, because he's going to be Prime Minister.
It's obviously going to be a secret operation.
One thing that is happening, though, one thing that is happening, we know it's about to happen, we revealed it on this show, and it's rare that we are proved right immediately, but we were, actually, because we had the record day the day after. The French are going to be taken off the beaches because they're going to go and police the Olympics. Also, human traffickers are now fast-tracking people through continental Europe because Europe voted to the right in some parts of it, and they can peddle this fear that they're going to get deported. So you need to get to Britain now, OK? Which is going to mean that more people are going to end up coming, and you could end up with issues like what we've got here, is clip of the Bibby Stockholm barge. Where is Keir Starmer's Labour government going to put all of the people? By the way, 90,000 people already on a watch list, or on a waiting list, I should say, asylum seeker waiting list, that under the current policy would never be allowed to claim asylum in this country, but under Labour will be allowed to claim asylum. So you're going to need a bigger barge, Sir Keir, aren't you? However, we can hear from him now.
What would you do with the Bibby Stockholm and the asylum seekers on board if you're Prime Minister?
Well, the thing we need to do in relation to asylum seekers is to make sure that we stop people climbing into boats on the northern coast of France.
But what would you do with the barge
across.
that's moored off Portland, currently housing a couple of hundred asylum seekers? What would you do with that?
That is evidence of the failure of the government. They are using barges, they're using hotels, it's costing the taxpayer an absolute
But would you get rid of it?
We cannot go on like
Would
this.
you get rid of the barge?
At the moment, what's happening is the...
I must say, I don't actually immediately know off the top of my head who that reporter was, but I think they've done a stellar job there. I quite enjoyed the level of sass of, would you get rid of the barge there? Did we get rid of the barge? What about the barge, you know? What about the barge? But yeah, what about the barge, John?
That's tricky. No, there's no doubt about that. No, I mean, there's very little they can say that hasn't either been tried and already failed. There are real problems about how you can't get better cooperation in Europe. That's one of the key points. I mean, goodness knows, the French are now in such a shambles politically. But if they could sort themselves out, there might be a government in France where you could say, now, look, hold on a moment. These people who appear to be claiming asylum in Britain have gone through your country. There comes a point where it really, this has got to be resolved.
But this is it. We're going to get
of...
record day after record day after record day in the channel. This is predicted to happen. I see no reason why it will not happen. That could be literally Keir Starmer's welcome into Downing Street, a string of record days. And then you've got the idea now that we will have 90,000 more people on the asylum backlog list. He's saying, oh, we're going to build 1.5 million new homes.
The point is, though, Patrick, when he becomes Prime Minister, hold on, when he becomes Prime Minister, this is the point. He will see the list of things he's got to solve. There are an awful lot of them, and he will realise this is not something he can do simply. But the responsibility will be his. That's the difference.
Well, look, coming up, as at least 4 Tory candidates have signed the Hindu Manifesto that demands easier immigration for persons of Indian origin and Hindu priests. Is sectarian politics on the rise in the UK? We will debate that. Plus,
could send a very symbolic gesture to millions of people by saying that she was going to stop using those jets.
I'm not sure he realises it, but Chris Packham has just mugged himself off big time. Next, I will be joined by the former chair of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. So that should be quite good. I'll see you soon.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The woke be with you these days, not the force be with you. And Star Wars, you know, it was the one thing as a kid that brought me and my brother together pretty close, and I love it with all my heart. But ever since Disney took it over, this diversity, equity and inclusion has run rampant throughout it. And actually we've had the actress from the latest Star Wars spin-off, a series on Disney, actually saying that making white people cry was actually what she wanted to do. Have a listen.
When people watch The Hate You Give, what do you want them to walk away with? Because I know everyone has a slightly different feeling.
Well, I mean, white people crying actually was the goal.
Yeah, so that diversity, equity and inclusion running rampant throughout Hollywood and ruining really good franchises. Actually ensuring, apparently, R2-D2, the little robot, you know, that scoots about and gets on the starships and all the rest of it, apparently that could be a lesbian now.
She's half white, this actress. This is what I don't understand. She's half Danish, then half African-American.
I have skin in this game, as you know, with a mixed-race child. Nobody ever sees a mixed-race child as half white. They see them as black.
We used to say that to focus on the colour of someone's skin was rampant racism and therefore we ought to reject it. Now we're saying actually potentially the only thing that we should notice about a person is the colour of their skin.
I don't really think she was actually wanting white people to be sobbing, and it wasn't malicious, but it's just this silly kind of ruination of something that's meant to be entertainment and fun. I wouldn't go as far as to say Star Wars is art. I'm not.
I love Star.
It is. excluding people. It's actually dividing people. Once again, by the colour of their skin, we are teaching people to not like each other.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, I'll be bringing you tomorrow's front pages. There has been a massive intervention in this general election from J.K. Rowling, by the way. Can you guess which side she's come down on? GB News, though, did hold its first Vote 2024, the leader's interview with Sir Keir Starmer. I'm just going to remind you of one of the things he said, which is about working people and whether or not he'd lift income tax thresholds.
Working people are people who work for a living, they pay their national insurance, they pay their income tax. Now that will be many millions of people who don't have very much in savings. It now would actually cover quite a lot of people who do have savings.
Income tax thresholds, will you lift them? The Tories say they'll lift them after 2028 and stop nurses and teachers paying a higher rate of tax. Will you do the same?
Well, I do want to bring those taxes down, but I'm not going to make promises that are unfunded.
Well, I'm very pleased to say I'm joined now by Sir Graham Brady. Sir Graham, we've got quite a lot to get through tonight, but I will start with that. Thank you for joining us down the line. Do you think it's fair for the Conservatives to be warning about Labour's tax issues when we have had the highest tax burden since World War II?
Yes, I think it is, and I think it's important that we warn about it. I think we also have to recognise we have overseen a period of a significant rise in taxation, and that's been very largely because of some big external shocks. But also, as you will know, Patrick, I was very strongly opposed to the extreme COVID lockdown policy. I think that was a huge mistake. It cost the country a vast amount of money. But we should also be pointing out that whatever it cost the country when Boris Johnson locked down repeatedly, Keir Starmer always wanted to lock down sooner, for longer, and more strongly, and the country would be in a massively worse position had Keir Starmer been responsible for policy through that period. So there are reasons why we've got the public finances in the state they are at the moment. There are debates we can have about how we got there and whether we should have been in the same place, but it's also very, very obvious that the Labour Party and Keir Starmer would have made it worse.
So do you think Sir Keir Starmer is lying then when he says that, taxes, certain taxes, they're not going to go up for working people? Do you think he is actually just lying?
I think he's being very selective in his choice of words and his definitions. And it was quite interesting, I thought, the way he defined working people. And I'm old enough to have got involved in the Conservative Party when Margaret Thatcher was leader. The great thing about the Thatcher revolution that was going on was that she understood that it's actually a point of principle that people should get to keep more of the money that they earn. And that should be a driving force. And it's not about picking particular segments of the population. It should be something we all want to do for everybody to make sure that they don't end up paying more than half of what they earn in tax, which so many people now do. And, interesting, I'm deputy chairman of the Centre for Policy Studies. We did some polling a few years ago, and it came out with very, very strong evidence. The whole of the British public, whatever their income level, whatever their age, there is a very strong feeling that the state shouldn't be taking more than half of what you earn, however wealthy you are. And, it's just a basic fairness, I think, that people respond to.
Yeah, I think that's quite hard to disagree with that, certainly when it comes to the amount of tax that people could be paying. Look, so when it comes to a scandal that I must say is bizarrely embroiled the Conservative Party, that is a betting scandal, all right? So Nigel Farage has, well, he said that you're morally bankrupt, not you personally, but the party, suggesting that you're like a dodgy tenant who, when he knows he's being evicted, takes the light bulb and the toilet seat with him. How do you respond to that?
Well, I've known Nigel for a long time, and he's got a very good creative turn of phrase, certainly. But I don't know the detail of all of the people who've been embroiled in bets on the general election. The only one of them I know reasonably well is Craig Williams, the Prime Minister's PPS up until the election. And, I think he's admitted he made an error of judgment. I think perversely, actually, the thing is that I suspect he wouldn't have done it if he knew the date of the general election. I think that he will have seen some things going on. He would have thought, oh, lots of people are talking about the autumn. And he thought, oh, yeah, I'm not so sure. So, of course, he bet on a July election, not on a 4th of July election. And, I didn't know the date of the election. I thought it was going to be in the autumn. I'd been advising that it should be in November or October, and then didn't know until about 4 hours before it was announced that it was going to be the 4th of July. But obviously, if you knew the date of the election, it would be very, very seriously wrong to place a bet on it. I think if you just think, well, I haven't been told, I don't know, it was an error of judgment. And of course, I think from memory, I think Craig put 100 quid on at 5 to 1. I think that.
Well, I think that's one of the more bizarre aspects to it, actually, which is that it doesn't pay the mortgage off, does it? The kind of amounts that were being bet, which I find all the more astonishing, maybe, for it actually happening at all. We obviously will have to wait and see the full outcome of any investigation. But it's been revealed today, though, by GB News reporter Charlie Peters, that apparently several Tory candidates have signed a Hindu manifesto that campaigns for looser immigration rules for elderly Hindus and religious workers. The manifesto calls for those who commit microaggressions against Hindus to face specific prosecution as an anti-Hindu hate or Hinduphobia, apparently. Is this not a rise or an acceptance of sectarian politics, do you think?
I think I've been a candidate 7 times and been elected 7 times. So you get, as a candidate, a huge amount of stuff sent to you by different interest groups. I think you need to be pretty careful about what you sign up to and what you commit to. And sometimes people make mistakes. I haven't seen the Hindu manifesto, but I think it is something you should be very cautious about, especially if you're making commitments that seem as though they might apply to some people and not others. And certainly, I think there can be a very strong case for saying that people might want to bring elderly relatives into the country, especially if they're able to provide for them and provide for their healthcare and their care in later life. But obviously that should apply regardless of what your religion is. I think the other point that I picked up, I think listening to an earlier report on it, was that it applied to Hindu priests. And I thought that might be a perfectly reasonable point. I don't know what the number of Hindu priests in the country is at the moment, and how many more might be wanted to minister to the Hindu population.
I think if I'm being completely fair, if I was sitting here now and 4 members of the Labour Party had signed up openly to a Muslim group's demands, I think we would probably be hammering them for that a bit, and I do wonder whether or not you think it is acceptable for Conservative MPs, seriously, to be doing that kind of thing.
What I said is I think it's a good idea to be even-handed. And, if you're going to say this for Hindu people, you've got to say it for Muslim people, you've got to say it for Jewish people, you've got to say it for any other race or religion that has a significant population here. And, I think as long as people have an even-handed position, then that's fine. They can be judged on that position and whether it's consistent with other things they're saying, such as the need to control numbers coming into the country.
Well, that's exactly it, because the implication is if you play that out to its natural conclusion, which is you're consistent to every religion, then presumably the policy is more immigration. But finally, though, the word on the street, I'm not entirely sure exactly which street, but the word on the street is that Dame Priti Patel could be in the front running to replace Rishi Sunak if, indeed, Rishi Sunak does lose the election. The shackles are off from you now, Sir Graham. You can rest easy. I believe that you've got a lot of things planned after you're moving on from a long and esteemed political career. So come on, then. Should Priti Patel take over from Rishi Sunak?
Well, Priti's an old friend, and I'm delighted to see that she's in any contest. That's great. There may be other great people. I very much hope that Rishi is going to win. And one of the things I would stress, the time I've spent out here in Altrincham on the doorstep with our excellent candidate Oliver Carroll. We're getting a good reaction. It's certainly not consistent with the polls, and I'm hearing that from a lot of other people. So I'm more positive than the media and the people reading the polls would be. But if we do end up with the leadership election, I think it's great. We're going to have a good choice of candidates, and Pretty certainly would be amongst them.
Oh, he's a master at the... you can see why you were in the game for so long, so Graham. All right, well, you would she be your favourite, though?
Who else might be in the rally? My favourite is...
I didn't get that, but I am being told that we are out of time. But look, anyway, and also say hello to the people of Altrincham for me as well, because I'm from near that neck of the woods originally, so take care. That's Sir Graham Brady there. Thank you very, very much. All right, now, coming up, yes, we were mentioning it a bit there, weren't we? We were saying the Hindu Manifesto, likely inspired by the Muslim vote as well. Should we be more concerned about the rise of sectarian politics? We're going to be having a little chat about whether or not multiculturalism really is working in Britain. Plus, yes, life is all about balance, isn't it? But next, I bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. There has been an astonishing intervention from none other than J.K. Rowling. Stay tuned.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News and weather update from the Met Office. This weekend will be a little bit cloudier than the week has been, but it's still going to be warm. But next week will be even warmer. For the time being, though, we've got a few weather fronts still moving in from the west. That's going to introduce quite a lot of cloud from western areas, but also some rain through this evening for parts of Wales, northwestern England, much of Scotland, down into the southwest as well through this evening. And that's going to push eastwards through the night, introducing more cloud to central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Now, behind that, it does turn much clearer across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. We could see temperatures as low as 5 degrees for Northern Ireland, but for many of us, another fairly mild start to the day. However, sunshine is going to be slightly more limited very first thing tomorrow, but for much of Scotland, it should be a fairly bright start to the day. They will likely see a bit more cloud across eastern areas of Scotland, perhaps into the far northwest as well. A risk of the odd shower, but for many areas of Northern Ireland and Scotland, a bright start to the day. Elsewhere, across parts of northeast England, a cloudy start to the day. Some drizzly rain as well across eastern areas of England, but for much of Wales and the southwest, still fairly bright. And that sunshine will become a bit more widespread throughout Saturday. The cloud's going to break up and lift up, and that will allow a few showers to break out here and there across eastern areas of England. But I think most of us should stay dry through the day on Saturday. And in that sunshine, still feeling fairly warm. We've got very high UV levels and very high pollen levels. Temperatures climbing towards 24 degrees across the southeast, but widely into the low 20s. Another warm day to come on Sunday. There is more cloud arriving from the west through the day, though, so it will likely be another cloudy start, this time across Wales, northwestern England and into the southwest. But once again, it will brighten up as the day goes on. And in that sunshine, it will feel very warm, turning even warmer, though, Monday and into Tuesday as temperatures climb to the mid to high 20s.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, and it is time to bring you tomorrow's front pages, which I have right here, so let's do it. There are some really good ones here. That is the Daily Mail, which is Farage, the West provoked Putin. They've also got a lovely snap there of Kate's magical holiday picture. Things are getting better. It's William and the kids. And let's move it on. So we've got I'm just going to tell you what's on the front of the Times, actually, because this is the big one that we're going to be discussing. J.K. Rowling has intervened now in this election. She said that Labour has turned its back on women, and they've splashed with it on the front. The author says that she would struggle to vote for Starmer, doesn't trust his judgment. I'll just read you a little bit about this, because we're going to be dwelling on it anyway, but... she says, as long as Labour remains dismissive and often offensive towards women fighting to retain the rights their foremothers thought were won for all time, I'll struggle to support them. The women who wouldn't be quiet didn't leave Labour, Labour abandoned them, she's saying. I mean, there's strong stuff in here. There's a massive intervention from J.K. Rowling, that, to be honest with you, a couple of weeks ago in this general election campaign. We'll go into that in a bit more detail. Whiz on to another couple of the papers, though, for now. So I've got here a copy of The Mirror, which is Stephen Killer's freedom bid. Stephen Lawrence Killer David Norris is applied to be freed as his minimum 14-year term has ended. I'm going to go to The Eye. National Trust challenges UK leaders to save Britain's rivers. Nation's biggest conservation charity signs up to The Eye's Manifesto. It's quite self-important, isn't it, for a newspaper to publish his own manifesto? All right, OK, I'm going to whiz you over to my panel now. I've obviously got John Sargent, I've got Joanna Jarchu, as well, and Alex Armstrong. As a woman, I'll start with you, Joanna. What do you make of J.K. Rowling accusing Keir Starmer of abandoning women and saying... I'm just trying to find other quotes here from her in all of this, really. Talking about how... that he doesn't know whether a woman's got a penis or not. Talking about Rosie Duffield, who was a Labour MP who was absolutely hammered, really, over this, saying Rosie has received literally no support from Starmer over the threats and abuse, some of which originated from within the Labour Party itself, and has had a severe, measurable impact on her life. What do you think of J.K. Rowling's intervention?
Well, I mean, J.K. Rowling obviously has been so vocal about this for so long, and she's going to take this as a big opportunity. Obviously, she's on the front page for a reason. But I think that going against Keir Starmer on this is slightly unfair, and I think that he actually explained his standpoint a bit on Question Time the other day when he said that what he disagreed with was the way that Rosie Duffield the remarks that she actually made, because it's quite dangerous to say certain things, and we've got to kind of acknowledge, especially when we're talking about these type of things as politicians, to respect.
I'm not entirely sure of the figure on this, but it seems to be ringing a bell to me that about 52 or 54% of the British population, I think, are female. I think that's about right.
That's about right,
willing to be shouted down on that. Either way, it's a huge voter base, and if J.K. Rowling splashed all over the front of the Times tomorrow morning, it lands on doorsteps all around the country, there are a lot of women who feel like this.
Yeah, but we've got 5 years of this, haven't we? So we've got 5 years to look forward to of Keir Starmer and the Labour Party tearing themselves apart on whether they agree a man is a man and a woman is a woman. It's totally bonkers. The treatment of Rosie Duffield by the Labour Party is abysmal, so has not received any support. Even after reaching out to Keir Starmer, she received no support, which says a lot about his character. This is a man who styles himself as changing the Labour Party, but he's only changed it where he feels it matters. And he's only changed his opinion on whether a man is a man and a woman is a woman because Tony Blair's changed his opinion. It's quite telling, isn't it?
No,
it's quite
not
telling.
quite
Of course it is.
How damaging is this for Sir Keir Starmer? You've got probably the most famous author in the world, I think, saying that he's got poor judgment.
No, I mean, obviously he won't be pleased with that. I think the trans row, I think we have now passed peak trans. I think there was a time when it just seemed to be rowing about all the time, and it got absolutely nowhere. We're now back to where we thought we were, which is that there are men and men and women and women, and some people feel uncomfortable with the gender they're in.
It's interesting because
and that's really that has now been pretty well. Wait a minute, that has now pretty well been agreed, and for most people, it has.
It's not. John, can I just intervene here because this is important? I will come back to
you
this.
You think nobody agrees with that?
Well, no.
Most people agree with what I've just said.
Labour have said, I agree with you that man is a man and woman is a woman. Yeah,
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Joanna doesn't.
No, she doesn't.
I've not had a brain transplant and changed my views. One thing I'm trying to say is that under Labour now, they're going to make it easier for people over the age of 18, so it's not kids we're talking about, over the age of 18, to legally change their gender, which will mean more men in women's changing rooms, John, and that's an issue.
Well, you know, that's a pessimistic view. I take a more optimistic view and a feeling that this crazy...
That's not pessimistic, that's bonkers.
No, but this crazy argument, which has gone on for for 2 or 3 years, I hope is now just dying down.
It's not an overnight thing, and I think that's what we need to
some
acknowledge.
people have so enjoyed it and got so entrenched in the argument, they can't imagine just thinking about other things. But it's just not one of those arguments. You'll end up with the Blair position, the position that you have, Patrick, the position I have, and I think Alex has.
I do.
I'm not
very
so
much
sure.
so. Very much so.
Yeah, look, go on. So just one more before we get to a bit of Farage. I mean, I can see this having quite a big impact on the female vote, Alex. Do you think it would?
Yeah, look, I mean, she has been a feminist, a women's rights campaigner for a very, very long time, and she's traditionally been very vocal about her support for the Labour Party. So a lot of people and a lot of women who follow her across the country are going to be looking at their vote going, actually, you know, she's someone I listen to. She's someone who campaigns quite heavily on women's rights.
I don't think it'll have that much of an impact because you can be a feminist and also be pro-trans. So I don't think that it's, if you're just a feminist and if you come from that camp, you're going to believe in whatever J.K. Rowling says.
OK, all right, now, on to Reform UK, because Nigel Farage was grilled by Nick Robinson earlier on, and he was asked this question about his stance on Putin. OK, let's have a listen.
We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
And very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary-General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansionism.
Is that an outrageous thing to say?
No, he's absolutely right, and I want to be really clear about this because there's people online who will call me a Putin sympathiser. Call Farage a Putin sympathiser because the headline has been taken out of context by what the BBC and others and the Daily Mail are doing today. Of course, they're attacking Farage. Look, this is not unprecedented. When the missiles arrived in Cuba, in the Cuban Missile Crisis, America very quickly rose to arms and said, we're going to go to war if you don't get those missiles out the way. And this is what's been happening. NATO has been moving closer towards Russia. NATO's purpose is to deter a war, not start one. And they do know, but by moving closer, putting nuclear weapons closer to Russia, they're going to provoke them.
John,
it's not unfair.
you disagree, I believe.
Yeah, no, I completely disagree. I mean, that's, as usual, it's an attempt by Alex, I'm afraid, to rewrite history. What Putin was hoping to do, if you remember, was very quickly to overcome the government in Kiev and go back to the old position of the Cold War, and this was going to be...
But why did he want that buffer?
No, why? Because that was Putin's life as early on. I made this point early on, so I mustn't repeat myself. But he likes to live in the feeling that we have this great influence, we have a repeat of the Russian Empire. That's what he was about. But also he thought he would do it easily. So the idea that he wanted this war, he was provoked into a war, he wasn't even doing that himself.
Yeah, but can I just really quickly make this point really quickly? Farage isn't saying that Putin didn't start the war. He's very clear that he says Putin did start the war, and he's right. But we have to. He can. Putin's using the cover. Putin is using this as cover for the war, for his own people to antagonise.
All right, well, go on, John.
Sorry.
I actually agree with both of you. So I do agree with Alex that NATO was supposed to be there as a defence mechanism, and it seems as if you're going to go closer and closer, then it looks like you're trying to attack. But at the same time, we have to take into account historical context of what Russia has been doing in Ukrainian territory for years and years and years. And even if we go back to the annexation of Crimea, it almost seems as if they're just chipping away at Ukraine until they can actually get whatever they can get. So, Putin, I think, would be satisfied with, by the end of this year, taking over half of what's the current Ukrainian, and then leaving it at that, and then in the next 50 years taking a bit more and a bit more.
I don't think you're wrong, but don't take Farage's comments out of context. That's the really important thing, and that's what the mainstream media are trying to do to attack him.
All right, lovely stuff. OK, well done, everybody. Now, coming up, Chris Packham, off of the environment, makes a private jet plea to a global superstar.
Could send a very symbolic gesture to millions of people by saying that she was going to stop using those jets.
Stay tuned to find how badly he has managed to mug himself off. It's Patrick Christys tonight. I'll see you in a sec.
Nana a Queer. Weekends from 3 p.m.
Theatres and drama schools are being offered plus-size inclusivity training. Come on, seriously, is this really a thing? In order to tackle fat phobia, to apparently make the theatre more inclusive for bigger bodies, a lady called Ruth Ann Phillips, who is a plus-size theatre director, she's behind the drive. Now, apparently, her own research, so it's not exactly independent, showed that 9 out of 10 respondents should have training on size inclusion. Ruth is also the co-founder of Inclusion Collective, which is an organisation that provides training in creative well-being, body positivity and inclusive movement. Her website contains resources on fat activism, advocacy for the rights and dignity of fat people, combating discrimination, and the body-conscious scale. This is actually about health. Ruth is conflating the two. Professor Carol Sikora, a consultant oncologist, said normalising obesity has become fashionable in advertising and the media, simply to sell stuff. But it's got nothing to do with celebrating diversity. Nobody needs to be fat. It's like encouraging risky behaviours such as smoking, driving after a booze up, or lying like a lobster on the beach in the sun. A balanced diet and lots of exercise are the cornerstones of a healthy lifestyle. He went on to say, how can anybody possibly justify these projects? Plus-size inclusivity training, please bring back common sense. Well, exactly. I'm for equal opportunity and for giving people credit based on merit and what they bring to the table, even if it is food. Only joking. That's where the way to my heart is through my gut. I'm looking for a man that can cook. But in truth, being obese can be dangerous. And whilst I absolutely agree you should love what God gave you, obesity is the biggest killer and costs the health service a fortune. People come in all shapes and sizes, and it's a wonderful thing. But to conflate body positivity with obesity is very dangerous.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I've got some more front pages for you. So, we start with the Daily Telegraph. Starmer will reverse Brexit, says Kemi Badenoch. Farage's line there, the West provoked Russia into attacking Ukraine. But on that Kemi Badenoch, one minister has urged Tory voters to stick with the party despite frustrating past few years. The Daily Express. Wonderful help has gifted me an extra special birthday. Beloved Daymaster Ranson today shares the joy of her 84th birthday that she never expected to see. Of course, there was all the... she helped to kick-start an assisted dying discussion in this country, which I must say, well, we're going to get after this election, because both Sunak and Starmer are keen to have a vote on it, and I think that vote will probably pass. So.
Free vote.
Yeah, so let's go to The Guardian. 300 million NHS patient records stolen by Russian hackers. National Crime Agency considering striking back. Well, it'd be nice if they did, actually, wouldn't it? Well, what are you considering?
Bomb Moscow,
Yeah, Newcomb. No, don't.
Don't get started.
Don't. So, John and I can't be left in each other's company like this. You know, the world will be over in seconds. All right, OK, look, those are your front pages. I have obviously got my wonderful panel with me as well this evening. But I wanted to play you a clip from TV presenter and conservationist Chris Packham. He's probably well acquainted with Swift. But he's chasing the attention of a different kind of Swift at the moment. Taylor, in a decision hilariously lacking in self-awareness, Chris has decided to contact Taylor Swift, the global megastar that is Taylor Swift, to ask her to stop using her private jet.
Enormous capacity to communicate, a very powerful, intelligent young woman. She should be using that platform to lead, and certainly not behaving as a rock star of yesteryear, travelling around the world in private jets. And I think that she's got to show that legion of adoring young fans that she cares about their future. She could send a very symbolic gesture to millions of people by saying that she was going to stop using those jets.
So has she responded to you?
She hasn't, Kate.
Does she have any idea who you are?
Yeah.
No, Kate, no, she doesn't. No. She's seen your message, Chris. No, she hasn't seen your message. Right, on to another hilarious England fan moment. Those supporters in Frankfurt have gone viral after they invented a new sport at the expense of a mate who was a little worse for wear. Oh, no, there you go. And that was before he watched Gareth Southgate's terrible football. But the good news is the fan is alive, he's well, and he's back on the beers. Look at him, there he is today. Well in sun. Yeah, it's the very best of us. Now, it's time to reveal today's greatest Briton Union jackass. John, I will start with you, please, my good man. Who is your greatest Briton?
Well, it's no, it follows straight on. This is an honorary award I'm giving tonight, and it goes to Taylor Swift. Why?
Aww.
Because she's just obviously good fun. She doesn't do... her plane wasn't at standstill anyway. No. She doesn't use the plane when she's worried about security. So I just think it's time to say, well done her. She's given £300 million to the economy in London alone. She's here for 8 performances. The kids love her. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I didn't have you down as a Swiftie, John.
Yeah. Well,
I was just about to say.
I'm moving that way.
That definitely was not on my bingo card. My greatest Briton is Virginia Hislop, a 105-year-old, and this is honorary, by the way, 105-year-old who received her master's degree from Stanford Graduate School after beginning her journey there over 80 years ago. Absolutely.
Oh, bless her. Oh, these are great. These are very wholesome. Yeah. Go on, Alex, drag into the gutter.
Well, my greatest Briton's a good one today. I think I beat John to it this week. It's Prince William, the Prince of Wales, of course. It's his birthday. I think he's 41. Is it 41 or 42? I can't remember.
Looks well,
but he's got a lot on the last year or so. His dad and of course, the Princess of Wales. So I mean, big birthday celebration for him.
Well done. All right, okay. I could have chosen any of those. We did earlier in the week have a Prince William. I've gone for Taylor Swift. I've gone for Taylor Swift mainly because I would never stop hearing about it at home if I didn't have to.
Absolutely.
Right, who's your Union jackass, John?
Well, it's pretty boring, really, but a terrible story. It's the police chief, who wore all these medals that he didn't belong to. And what is extraordinary is that the whole procedure goes through. The panel sits, the tribunal decides. He doesn't even turn up at the end of it. Why shouldn't he have just resigned the moment it was perfectly obvious? It was brought, the action was brought by his wife, his ex-wife. Isn't it extraordinary?
All right. Crazy.
It's a woman scorned.
Mine is the whole of the UK.
Hang on a minute.
No, it's the UK's work ethic. I'm only joking. So because there's only one British applicant out of 200, and I just find that really ridiculous, really, to say that everybody's always kind of complaining about migrants taking their jobs. One thing, actually, there was a viral clip where somebody was saying, all the immigrants are taking my job. Why don't you have a job? I've got a criminal record.
I did see that. Right, very quick. Sorry, Alex.
I'm taking down a national treasure, unfortunately. It's Dame Judi Dench today. She is joining Extinction Rebellion ahead of the election to help protect nature. It's totally bonkers. I don't know what she's thinking. It really is absolutely nonsense.
All right, lovely stuff. Today's winner of the Union Jackass is Nick Adderley, who is the police chief who wore, what must I say, fake war medals, is that right?
Yeah,
stolen
one fake, the rest of them he should never have even had, and they were real, but he shouldn't be wearing them.
All right, fantastic. Well, look, can I just say a massive thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening at home. I will be with you again on Monday. Headliners are up next. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Take care.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News and weather update from the Met Office. This weekend will be a little bit cloudier than the week has been, but it's still going to be warm. But next week will be even warmer. For the time being, though, we've got a few weather fronts still moving in from the west. That's going to introduce quite a lot of cloud from western areas, but also some rain through this evening for parts of Wales, northwestern England, much of Scotland, down to the southwest as well through this evening. And that's going to push eastwards through the night, introducing more cloud to central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Now, behind that, it does turn much clearer across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. We could see temperatures as low as 5 degrees for Northern Ireland, but for many of us, another fairly mild start to the day. However, sunshine is going to be slightly more limited very first thing tomorrow, but for much of Scotland, it should be a fairly bright start to the day. They will likely see a bit more cloud across eastern areas of Scotland, perhaps into the far northwest as well. A risk of the odd shower, but for many areas, Northern Ireland and Scotland, a bright start to the day. Elsewhere across parts of northeast England, a cloudy start to the day, some drizzly rain as well across eastern areas of England, but for much of Wales and the southwest, still fairly bright. And that sunshine will become a bit more widespread throughout Saturday. The cloud's going to break up and lift up, and that will allow a few showers to break out here and there across eastern areas of England. But I think most of us should stay dry through the day on Saturday. And in that sunshine, still feeling fairly warm. We've got very high UV levels and very high pollen levels. Temperatures climbing towards 24 degrees across the southeast, but widely into the low 20s. Another warm day to come on Sunday.
There's still time to win our Summer Spectacular with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Plenty of mixers, plenty of lovely gin.
Yes.
What have you got here for us? Just explain what you've brought in.
So today I'm going to be presenting the Cotswolds Dry Gin and the Cotswolds Wildflower Gin.
Ooh.
So the first one that was introduced into our market was the Cotswolds Dry Gin. Now we have 9 different types of botanicals. We introduce into our pot still. We introduce well, obviously juniper berries because it's a London dry. Angelica roots and coriander seeds, giving it that little limey flavour. Also, cardamom seeds, then black peppercorn, giving it a little spice.
Ooh.
And then the part that is more interesting that regards to the pouring, we have the grapefruit peel and the lime peel. We're going to start with the Cotswolds Dry, okay? So the first one introduced.
So Ellie was taking the mick out of me this morning because I said my favourite gin was, what is it, pink lemonade?
You like a pink gin and lemonade, yes.
You called me, I'm going to say what you said. You said that's a bit girly.
As you see, it turned into cloudy. Those are the oils of the spices because we don't filter it. Our gin is completely unfiltered.
Got it.
I love this. It's 11:52. It's never too early. Cheers.
Cheers.
And would you have any, this sounds very juvenile, would you have any snacks with gin? Or does it ruin it?
Olives.
Ah, you can tell your culture.
It depends on how